Life in Letters.
The presenting sponsor of My Life in Letters is SprayPlanet.com. This is where you go to get everything MTN colors, be it 94, hardcore, whatever it is, go check them out. They're also the distributor of Crink products, Posca markers, and Grog inks. So go check out SprayPlanet.com right now, order something, and go make your mark. But without further ado, let's get into this next episode. My Life in Letters, we are back, and today on the phone, really honored to have this man able to carve out the time. Doc TC5 on the phone. Where are you calling from, Doc? Where are you at?
I'm actually on my couch, sitting in the house, relaxed.
You in New York City, though?
Yes, I am.
Okay, well, me too. And dude, it's an honor to have you on. And shout out to my man Chris Cycle that made the connection for us to be able to get you on the phone. That's the homie, and I appreciate it. But yeah, thanks for being here, man. It's important to us that we get guys like you that have this that have the history, that have the pedigree, and just all the experience and knowledge that you bring to the table. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, and like I was saying before we started recording, we try to find out what that moment was, if there was one moment, an isolated moment when you were a child, when you were a youngster, whatever it was, that got you pumped off letters, that got you interested in wanting to craft letters. And from some of the research I've done, like, you're a real tactician when it comes to how you approach letter development. So I'm really curious, and I know our listeners are too, with what was the young Doc, pre-Doc, what was he all about? What did you see as a child that made you interested in wanting to craft letters?
Well, it's kind of funny. It more or less stems from me not being a really good artist. And when I was coming up, there was a group of kids that could draw very well, and I was in that group, but I had kind of peaked early. I realized that I was more technical than I was artistic. So when it came to drawing people or drawing faces and things like that, I was average. I didn't have the perception. I couldn't, form everything correctly. So what I did notice was when I drew buildings, or if I drew any type of structure, I was able to knock that out the park. So years later, when I switched and I started hanging out with kids that did graffiti, and we would do black books, I even noticed immediately that I wasn't really good enough to do all the super characters and backgrounds and all that stuff. So I just said early on, I'm really good with line work. I'm really good with structuring dimensional things. So I leaned heavy towards that right away.
And can you tell us where and when you were born?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1964. And
so, like, you were talking about this group of kids that you used to hang out with. Were these neighborhood kids? Like, how did you know this
Yeah, group? These are all kids from the neighborhood, and a few that I went to school with. And there was a couple of them that were really talented at a young age. I knew two guys. One guy in elementary school, he had his own comic book at the age of probably like 8 years old.
That's cool.
He was really that good. Like he had his own Spider-Man comic book that he drew on his own.
Wow.
And
did he like sell those or like copy those and distribute them?
He just did them, and all the kids would stand around and read them. Every week he'd come with a new comic book.
That's
and
cool.
I mean, this kid was brilliant, and I really tried to keep up with this guy, but it wasn't to be, and then later on I met another guy, and this guy was so talented to the point of being a misfit. I mean, by today's standards, he would probably be overanalyzed and put on pills because he was an odd kid.
Wow. Yeah.
But talent wise, I mean, this guy, he probably, his name was Marvin. We used to call him Starvin' Marvin. It's funny, I remember his name. He was so brilliant, but he was a social misfit,
Hmm.
But he had probably maybe 20 different comic books, completely illustrated with storylines and everything.
So there was Marvin who was doing comic books, and the other cat that was doing comics.
Yeah, his
Okay.
name was Mark, I think.
Okay.
His and both these guys were like just brilliant guys, and
Yeah, sounds like it.
you know, but I couldn't keep up with either one of them.
But did you try? Did you try your own hand at doing comics?
Yeah,
Mhm.
like I would sit like if my boy Mark did, 10 Spider-Man comic books, I'd still be struggling on page one. You know, I just didn't have it like that. And then
Yeah.
I realized back then I was better copying than creating.
Hmm.
These guys could create,
Hmm.
and once I realized that I couldn't create, then I left it alone.
Yeah.
And that's why it was kind of refreshing when I discovered graffiti, because that was something that it had a different set of boundaries.
Right.
It didn't have to look a certain way.
Hmm. When you say that you were copying for a while, like what were those things you were copying? Were you looking at
Just,
other comics and?
yeah, any comic, any
Hmm.
cartoon, I could sit and copy it, sure, knock
Hmm.
it out the park. But if you just gave me a blank sheet of paper and say, listen, I need you to draw Bugs Bunny right here, don't look at
Right.
nothing,
Yeah.
it wouldn't come out the same. I needed reference.
Yeah. And
So
and you were born in the mid '60s. Like when did you
yeah.
first start doing some drawings on your own? Were you like very early on, like this
Oh
crew of
yeah.
kids?
Yeah. Well, no, actually, art runs in my family. My father was an artist,
Hmm.
and my mother was an artist.
What kind of
And
artists were they? What did they make?
my father he drew, he scribbled,
Hmm.
he did faces, he did, whatever. He had an artistic flair.
Hmm.
And then my mother was like on the other side. She was into garment making. She could design clothes.
Hmm.
And then it jumped to me, and then it jumped to my son
Hmm.
and daughter. It continues on. Actually, my son caught like all sides of it, because he does fashion and illustrating
Hmm.
and graphics.
That's cool. And,
So
and so then, did your parents, because of their flair for it, did they encourage you to be artistic?
no, not at all, not
Mm.
at all. It just was in the blood.
Hmm. But did they discourage it?
No, they didn't discourage it, but
Okay.
they were actually surprised. Like I remember when I started drawing on my own, because my mother wasn't the type that she drew. She would cut out patterns and she could design things and sew clothes together.
Hmm.
When I actually started drawing, she says, "Yo," she says, "that's really bizarre." She said, "Your father was an artist."
Hmm.
Because he didn't grow up in the household with me, so
Hmm.
it was just something that just transferred through the DNA. And she was like
Yeah.
really surprised.
Hmm.
She said, "Wow, you picked that up from your father." She goes, "That must be in the in the genes or
Yeah.
something." And
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, good to know." But
And
her,
so,
go ahead.
I'm also just curious, were you an only child or were there other kids in the house?
Yes, I'm an only. I'm an
Oh,
only.
okay. Okay. So you were there doing your thing on your own, but you had this crew of friends, including Mark and Starvin Marvin. By the way, whatever happened to those cats? Where'd they end up?
Mark, I lost contact with him around junior high school. I think he
Hmm.
went to a different junior high school than me. And then Marvin just kind of, I knew him years later when I was in my teens, and he just disappeared one day.
Mm, okay.
I don't know if he moved or, what his story was, but
Yeah.
I always wondered about that guy, because when I say brilliant, I mean, you know, he's probably the last dude on earth to ever get laid, but he can draw the hell. He could draw the hell out of some cartoons.
Yo,
Boy.
that's hilarious.
Yeah,
Well, okay,
he's
and
got
so,
to be like a 50-something-year-old virgin. Absolutely.
yo, but he's still that misfit, that like, and he inspired you.
Well,
He clearly inspired you a lot because you're talking about him.
absolutely,
Yeah. Okay.
absolutely.
Hmm. And I'm also curious because you were talking about this like line work that you were comfortable with, that you felt like you could excel at. Like, where did that first start? Like you said, buildings. Did you start drawing architectural stuff early?
Well, no, back then we had like art period, and
Mhm.
they would throw things at us, and they showed us like some three-dimensional stuff with like a cityscape, where you got to do the buildings narrowing down to a street, in
Right.
perspective. And when I did that exercise, I just nailed it. And the teacher just looks at me and she goes, "Oh, you got to take drafting when you get in high school." She's like, "You're really good at this." She's like, "You have an eye for it." So that was just something that manifested itself internally. That was my comfort zone.
What grade of school were you in when that happened?
I want to say second or third grade.
Oh, okay. Yeah, pretty early. So you were like 9 years old, and you just had this thing. And do you remember that?
Absolutely.
Do you remember that exercise in particular? And if so,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
So
I
then
do.
if you remember it, did it surprise you that you just kind of nailed it the first time? Or was it?
No, it was all subconscious. Because like I said, they would constantly throw different exercises at us. I remember, actually, I never really had a clue as to how good I could be until one day they had one of the girls from the class stand up on top of a desk, and they made the whole class draw her. And I remember the teachers coming over, and they kept calling the other teachers over, and like, "Look what he's doing," and I'm like, "What's going on?" Like, I thought I did something wrong, and they were just like, "Could we hold this for a minute?" And they were just like, "Yo, this kid is really good. Like, he's like, we have to let his mother know at the next teacher meeting that
Right.
he's got to pursue art." Because it was no formal training. It was just a really jive art class. Just like, okay, today we're going to draw circles. Today we're going to draw a flower in a vase. Today we're going to draw buildings,
Right.
whatever it was. Today we're going to draw this car. It was very informal. It wasn't even like a real art class. But that's kind of where I knew that I was different than the other 20 kids in the room.
And that was like you were doing sort of a figure drawing of this girl?
Yeah, no, they wanted a real life drawing,
Yeah.
and I actually, like in the weird back corners of my brain, I actually remember the drawing.
What did it look like?
And it was just a pencil sketch of this girl. I remember she had like ponytails, and she had like a flowing dress, and I actually caught the perspective and the folds and the pleats and everything. And but even then, that's going back to my normal thought process of line work, because I remember how I detailed her dress, and I caught all the perspectives of the folds and the pleats and everything. Actually, I remember that more than the physical girl.
And this also seems to kind of align with copying, because you're not coming out of your head. You were looking at this, and in a way, you were just copying what you saw.
Yes.
Whereas you might have struggled if you looked at that girl once and then walked out of the room and had to draw it from memory.
Oh, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, interesting. And I think that's actually really normal for a lot of us, right? That like just putting something out of your head perfectly, character work, whatever, it takes a certain gift, right? Just like doing line work takes a certain gift. And so that's interesting, man. And that's a cool story. And so was that also around this second and third grade, or was that later?
Yes, that was the same time.
Wow. Yeah. And so then when you got to, also, I'm curious, because this is now early 70s when you're about 9 years old, right? Did you say you were born in 65? 64, yeah. So now it's like 1973 approximately when you're in third grade, and this is a show about graph, kind of first and foremost. And so I'm curious about 73. You're 9 years old. I remember being 9, and I was like, I thought I knew a lot. I thought I knew the world. At least I understood what was around me pretty well.
Yeah.
You must have been seeing graph at that time, right?
Well, I have a funny story about that. Same time. We're doing the art class, and I look over to my left one day, and I see a kid drawing letters. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "You don't know nothing about this." And I'm like, looking at him like, "Yes, I really don't. That's why I'm asking you, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm drawing my name." And I'm like, but that's not your name. And he's like, nah, it's my other name. And he's like, see, I told you, man, you don't understand this, man. He goes, my brother does this. And I'm like, well, if your brother does it, why do you do it? And he's like, yo, this is cool. Look. And I looked at it, and it was like bubble style, but, you know, a little bit like educated bubble style. And I said, okay. I said, I could do that. And he goes, no, you can't. And I says, I totally could do that. And he goes, you can't do this, man. And I said, all right. I said, you want me to do it? I'll show you right now. And he says, what name are you going to draw? No, actually, he said, what you going to write? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, like the name. What are you going to? And I said, I don't know. And I remember the only thing that could pop into my brain was prior to that, I was in a room full of adults and they were talking about cars. And it just shows you how like everything in your life forms from like the people around you.
Right.
And I remember all the men in the room going really nuts over Chevy cars. And it was like at some social event we were at, and all the men were just, you know, talking about Chevy this and Chevy that and Chevy this, and I'm like, oh, I guess that's if, you know, when you get older and you cool, you got to drive a Chevy. So right then and there, that's what popped into my head.
Chevy?
Just the word Chevy.
Chevy.
So, yep.
Yo.
And I did a Chevy piece right there on the spot. No erasing. I just bust out the same thing he did in that kind of soft, simple, chunky style. You know, I always call that educated bubble style.
Okay.
And I busted right on the spot. No erasing. I put the 3D on it and everything. And I handed it to him. And he just looked at me. And the reason I understood the 3D was from drawing the buildings.
Right.
So I handed that to him, and he goes, yo. He goes, you did this before? I said, did what before? He's like, you know, draw your name like that. And I said, no. He's like, yo, this is good. Can I keep this? And I said, yeah, take it. And I never, ever, you know, linked that to any other image or situation or feeling or anything. And it's so funny when I never forget when I actually met writers and got sucked into that whole lifestyle. It was like a tunnel, just like a wormhole, took me right back to that day.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, yo, I did this before. You know, like, imagine if that kid would have had more influence on me and like really pulled me in, or maybe took me to meet his brother and they showed me a black book or something like that. You know, I might have had interest in this in 73, 74.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
what I mean?
But and I'm curious if we can just back up a little bit. So before that moment, because I know you've been drawing a lot as a boy. Had you played with letters in any way? Just like basic letters?
No.
Really?
Not really.
Were you into just writing? Did you write as a kid? Write stories, or so you're reading these comics? Did you ever write your own little things?
Only on request. Like if like I did one panel, I'd write something witty for the character to say, and that was it. You know. And then I'm also really interested in knowing, so if this is 73 and you're seeing this dude show his bubble throw, your educated bubbles on paper, had you not yet taken notice of the graffiti that was on transit or in the streets anywhere? No. Okay. Absolutely not.
That's interesting.
Because so I didn't ride the trains much at that time. There really wasn't a need.
Right.
You know,
were you living in your neighborhood in Brooklyn and going to school as well?
I was, but we mostly did buses at that time.
What neighborhood did you grow up in?
In East New York, but I spent a lot of time in Queens with my grandmother.
Okay.
And that was all buses. But to this day, I hate buses.
And I'm curious about in early 70s, were there not there weren't a lot of tags insides on buses? People weren't doing that?
Not on the line that I rode.
Mm-hmm.
I rode the
Mm-hmm.
Queens buses.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
Queens buses, they weren't really doing that.
Mm-hmm. That's so interesting, man. So like you see this kid. Also, whatever happened to him? The kid who said, this is my black book and my
I
brother.
don't know. I really, that was more of a vague memory.
Interesting.
I couldn't even remember who the guy was.
Yo, man, I always wonder if he's one of our listeners. Like that's the kind of thing about this podcast. You just never know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So anyway, so that's cool, man. So you do this Chevy piece and it's about 73. This is all happening around 9 years
like
old.
73, 74.
So you do this Chevy throwy, educated bubble. Dude like loves it, wants to keep it. How did you feel like when you first put those up? Did anything, any kind of lights kind of turn on in your head?
Nah, nothing happened.
Nah, nothing. You just did it. But no, nothing really, no click, nothing. You were just like, it's just something you did.
That's because I hadn't discovered the world of graffiti.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 If I had been exposed just a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
it would have triggered something.
Mm-hmm. And
it wasn't until maybe like 2 years later that I looked out my window and I noticed I just noticed graffiti on a building, like a stylized tag. And it was this guy 001 from Top Crew. And I was just so green to it that a reason it caught my eye is because I thought it said Uni. And I was like, that's so stupid. Why would somebody write Uni on the building? And I'm like, that's just the dumbest thing I ever heard. Uni Top. And after staring at it for a long time, it dawned on me it was 001. Because the first two O's were bigger and the one was smaller. That's when it dawned on me. Because I thought it was like, ooh, when I first saw it. Because that's just how green I was to it. Like I had zero interest in it.
But what I am interested
whatsoever.
in is like you did that Chevy sketch. I'm saying that I understand it didn't click in your mind, but I wonder if visually now you were prepared to see. There's like this concept, man. I don't know if you've ever heard about this, that the Native Americans along the coastline when Columbus's ships were about whatever it was 300 yards out from the coastline, the natives. Now I don't know if this is true, and in fact it's could possibly even be offensive. But the thought is that since they had never seen a clipper ship before, they couldn't even see them, even though they were only 300 yards out, until like the wise man in this tribe or whoever, a tribal leader, saw it and pointed it out, and then they could all see it. Right now, I don't know if that is true, but I do have that own experience on my own. Like I'm looking for a brand new product at the drugstore. I never seen it before, can't find it. You ask the lady to help you. It's been right in front of you the whole time. But since I've never seen it, it's like not in my subconscious yet, right? And I wonder if Graph was the same way.
Well, sure, I can see that because the minute I noticed, it exploded. I mean, it literally just it spoke to me.
And did you start noticing it everywhere? You say you saw that that 001 top tag. And when did you see that? Around the same time? 73?
No, that would be like 75 maybe.
Okay. And then just like a little cap, like what about the time between 73 and 75? Were you just, being a kid and just doing your thing?
Yeah. I had no interest.
Okay. Was that the only thing you had done between that time frame, the Chevy back in 73?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
And then you see this 001 top tag, and you, like you said, you're like, what, Uni, whatever. Talk to us a little bit more about 75. Like then you started.
It's so funny. If I had never seen that the reason why that tag stood out to me was because it annoyed me, because I thought it said Uni. If it actually was a word that I could understand, I would have just dismissed it. But it was written outside of my bedroom window in the next building. So every time I gazed out my window, I see this Uni tag, and it wore me down. It made me look at it more. until I finally figured out it said 001. And once I saw it said 001, I said, oh, that's cool. That's like 007.
Mm.
You know, I was like, now this guy became mysterious. And then that's when I started looking around, and then I noticed there were tags in my hallway.
Mm-hmm.
There were tags in the park. There were tags, you know, and then I started mentally making like these recordings of whatever I saw.
Mm-hmm. Who were some of the other names? What else were you seeing in those hallway tags?
Well,
one
name that really stood out to me was a guy named Toma. And that stood out to me a lot because there was a TV show called Toma at the time.
That Toma?
Yeah, it was Toma, Man of a Thousand Faces. That was like a really hit TV show. The guy, I think, did crime fighting or something, and he would put on different disguises so no one could like notice him. It was like a really, you could probably Google that.
Yeah,
it was like really, it was really serious. So then I started associating like, oh, like guys take things from media and like make it their own.
Okay.
You know, and then well, kind of was the turning point for me was there was a guy in my project writing Cowboy. And his name was in every building in the whole complex. And then one day I met him. And then that's kind of changed everything. And I had known him. I had known his mother was like a friend of my mother's. And I'll never forget, you know, I always called him Clarence, but the guys in the street called him Cowboy. And then when I finally it's like, yo, wait a minute, you're Cowboy? He's like, yeah, what? And I'm like, no, you're a Cowboy. He's like, and? I'm like, no, like, and I'm, you know, when you write in the air, like you write the squiggle line.
Yeah.
I did that to him, and he goes, oh, shh. And he shushed me because he didn't want me to say it in front of his mother.
Right.
And that's when it all changed for me. I said, oh, it's a secret. And that's when it became interesting to me.
And I'm just curious then, like, what was it about that? Like, I mean, you're an 11-year-old boy. Probably, you know, you're changing. And so that secretive kind of element.
I don't know. It was just that skullduggery was always my thing, you know.
Nice. Okay.
Just being, you know, aliases and
right.
You know, being secretive, that always attracted me.
I mean, Man of a Thousand Faces, you were digging that show.
Yeah.
And then you find out Cowboy's like, nah, that's on the under. And so then you were like, oh, okay, so it's mystery. And okay. And so now it's 75, right? And you're like, now you're this 11-year-old kid. You got this understanding. What happened next? Did Cowboy... Did he start to show you stuff?
No, he wasn't like a real writer. He just wrote in every building. You know, I learned later on he was like lower level. He wasn't like a dude that was really doing it. Okay. But I just started going all through the projects, looking in all the stairways, because that's where names were, like on the back staircases. And those were the least traveled staircases. And that's where all the scribble was.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm interested, man, because, like, just growing up in the Bay Area, San Francisco, like, I'm super curious, and I think my listeners might be, too, for you to just tell us a little bit about, you know, East New York, 1975, or even New York City in 1975, your memories. Can you tell us a little bit more about what it was like back then?
Well, New York City was a beautiful place back then. Even the worst neighborhoods were still beautiful. This is like all pre-Reagan era, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, everything went to hell after he got in office.
So during the Carter years, it was a little bit. It was
sure
better. Okay.
Well, anything from Reagan on, didn't notice. I never experienced bad until Reagan got in office. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, war on drugs and just a lot of his policies.
well, the first thing he did was destroy like every single social plan that New York City
Right.
benefited off of.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
you know, and then his next step was to flood every single project in New York City with welfare recipients. You know, projects were working class places.
Right.
You know, projects were built for working class people.
Mm-hmm.
That was the whole purpose,
Mm-hmm.
to make affordable housing for all these people they needed to come work in New York.
Mm.
So, you know, my whole existence was surrounded by, you know, civil servants, police, firemen, cops that all lived in the projects. It wasn't a bad place.
Right. In fact, it was probably a pretty inspirational place because everybody was working and contributing to the city. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, you know, East New York, Brooklyn, my project, it was just a beautiful place.
Mm-hmm.
It was just fun day and night. That's all it was. It was just a lifetime of fun, you know. And then now it's 76, like the bicentennial.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember that year. It was like the whole country went nuts, you know.
Yeah,
and
patriotism,
I'm just like,
right? Everybody was proud. Yeah.
I didn't get it, you know, and I'm like, is this going to keep happening? Like, and that was the kind of the summer where I was off on my own a lot. And I got to go around the projects and just look in every building and take my little marker. I never forget, I had a little El Marco I bought at the corner store. It wasn't even a real marker.
That was the brand, El Marco?
Yeah, they made like these little box markers, you know. And I bought a red El Marco and I started writing my name in the back staircase. And
did you choose a name? I presume you weren't writing Chevy in 76.
No. I wasn't writing Chevy. I actually didn't have a name. You know, I was just like, every time I went there, I'd write something different.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, I didn't really know what I was doing or how it was supposed to go. You know, I just mimicked whatever I saw. I didn't have a style. I didn't have a purpose.
And yeah, I'm interested. Were you mimicking dudes like Cowboy who weren't really writers? They were just putting their name in the hallways? Or were there actually some other potentially real writers that you saw that you were getting some
No, there were
influence
some,
from?
but like the only way I knew that they were like real dudes is because they had spray paint or they had like this really weird marker that just seemed to have so much ink in it and so big, you know, not like my little El Marco, you know. And honestly, I really don't know why I did it. You know, I guess I was just left to my own devices. It was just something to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 76, my, I don't know, like most people from my generation to tell you that the first thing they would ask a kid was, what are you going to be when you grow up? Like
right.
you had to have that answer. It had to be good and it had to make sense, you know, and you were asked that literally like 40 times a day. And I'll never forget, I'd say in 76, my attention shifted to music. I had just experienced seeing a DJ for the first couple of times at a couple of house parties my mother had, and I was blown away. That's what I wanted to be. That's what I wanted to do. And music was just kind of like, forget art. It was all about music. What
was the song that you probably heard that night that got you like really pumped off it? Or the like genre?
No, it was a song called Pipeline. And I remember it distinctly because the guy left it in the house by mistake. And I still have that album till this day from like 76.
Who's the artist?
I can't think think of this guy's name right
That's
now.
cool. I'll go dig it up. And was it like disco? Was it like soul? What kind of music was it?
It was disco.
Okay, nice.
It was disco. Because that was the genre that was building around that
Right,
time in
of course.
'76.
Yeah. So you see this dude, he's playing this track Pipeline with a whole bunch of other stuff, and you're like, that's me. That's what I want to get down with.
Yeah, because he put the sound system in my bedroom,
Mm.
so I got to see the whole thing, and
And he came loaded with speakers and amplifiers and turntables
yeah.
and all that.
hmm
Dope.
And what's so funny is, to this day, I still do it. I've been a DJ longer than I've been a writer.
Mm. Okay, cool. Nice.
Yeah.
And so did you like start working like directly towards that at age 12 or whatever, like trying to get yourself some turntables and some vinyl?
Well, then it was a really weird thing. Oh, and the guy's name was Johnston, Bruce Johnston, I think it was.
Oh, that's the artist? Okay.
Yeah.
What about the DJ?
Yeah.
Do you remember a DJ's name that influenced you?
Nah. But back then, like I tell people, and when they get this convoluted mishmash of early culture, about DJing, and it's so nostalgic and so incorrect.
Mm.
Things were like very different back then, because the physical DJ set that everyone knows of today, 2 turntables and a mixer, didn't exist,
Mm-hmm.
because there was no need for it.
Right.
The only place you ever saw a mixer was in a nightclub or a radio station.
Mm.
Nobody had one.
Hmm.
Like I didn't even know it existed, because people just didn't use them.
Mm-hmm.
My very first setup was 2 turntables, was actually 2 different sound systems just next to each other.
Mm.
And you turn the volume off on one sound system and turn the volume up on the other sound system.
Okay. So there was no mix between tracks. It was like track would stop, another one would start.
Either that, or you would just fade it out,
Okay.
and
Okay.
bring it up.
Right.
And you would see guys using studio mixers or guitar mixers or different things like that in order to segue between turntables. And that just wasn't a thing. And I would say maybe in '77 was the first time I ever saw a mixer. And
was that a game changer? Where you're like, oh, I need that?
Well, you could need it all you want. You couldn't get one because it was too expensive.
Ah, okay.
Roughly like 76, 77, there was a mixer called the Clubman 101. That was like the beginning of the mobile DJ. The guy that could actually go somewhere and play and be effective. I mean, the earliest turntables didn't even have pitch control on them, so you couldn't even mix. Because disc jockey is a radio thing.
Right.
It just, no one was rocking parties except nightclubs. And nightclubs had these big convoluted mixers or mixing boards.
Right.
So it's just really odd, but how that segues into the graffiti. I was still lightly scribbling.
Okay.
And I had got to the point where I associated these names with the bigger names that I would see in the parks. And then I realized there were some guys doing bigger tags that looked like that Chevy that I did when I was a kid. And I said, okay, I can do that. And then I had like these little pads, and I would do the bigger names with the 3D, a little background color, and I would insert a character in there.
Mm.
They were very rudimentary and kind of horrible, but I was doing them.
Yeah, they were foundational stuff, you know.
Yeah, the characters were much better than the cartoon characters I put next to them were way better than the letters.
Mm-hmm, sure. Yeah.
But people liked it. They were like, okay, like, you ever going to do that on the wall? And I'm like, nah, there's no need for that. I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really more focused on the music stuff. So one day I got caught up in that trap of what are you going to be when you grow up?
Mm.
And I just threw something out there one day. I told my mother's friend, I'm going to be an X-ray technician.
Where'd that come from?
I had no idea. I just knew I wanted to do something technical with myself.
Okay, nice.
And I just threw it out there. And my mother starts laughing. And she goes, what are they going to call you? The disco doctor?
Yeah, right. Okay, I read this once. Okay, yeah.
And like, they all started laughing, but it sent a lightning bolt through me.
Hmm.
And because disco was hot, I was spinning disco.
Right.
I was making tapes, and I was like, disco doctor, that is so dope.
Mm-hmm.
And I just right there and there, I said, yo, doctor, that's it.
Yeah. And you didn't have a DJ name prior to that?
I never had a DJ name, but I didn't think of it as a DJ name. I thought of it as a graffiti name.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. But you were focusing most of your energy at this time on DJing. And I'm curious about that, if we can back up a little bit. How'd you acquire all your gear? How does a kid in 1976 or 77, whatever it is, how'd you get what you needed?
My mother already had a turntable in the house.
Okay.
She had records.
Mm-hmm.
She had speakers. And I kind of like jived my uncle out of some of his stereo equipment that he wasn't using.
Okay.
And what we were doing back then, we were doing these things called pause tapes, where if you had a really good tape deck that would stop and start on a dime, you could do mixes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not really mixes, but you could do edits. And we would take a song and pause it like on the one and extend it. And it was like these it's almost the way people used to cut and slice tape. We were doing that with tape decks.
Just hitting stop and start, or pausing and keep going.
Yeah, just pausing. No, they were called pause tapes because it was all pause.
Okay.
So if you knew how to do it on the one, like you had to learn the feel of your tape deck. We could do on a tape deck what guys were doing, backspinning and cutting records. So we would do that. Like, I could take a song like Disco Airlines and it's going dun, 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 and I could keep doing that with a pause. And actually it would sound like I DJ'd a whole tape. You couldn't tell the difference. You would put it in and everybody could party to it.
Wow.
And I could make a whole tape of break beats and disco songs, and I could edit it. It wasn't mixing. It was more like editing.
Right.
Editing, extending to remixing.
Who taught you how to do that? How'd you learn how to make a pause tape?
All the kids were doing it.
Oh, okay.
I just saw another kid doing it, and I had a better ear for music than him, and I just was like, I could do that better.
Okay. And you guys had a good tape deck at the house to do that with?
I had several tape decks, because what wound up being almost the best tape deck was the boom boxes. For some reason, those pause buttons were like some of the best. So what you would do is you would do a line in from the record, put the record on and cue it up, and then hit that pause button, release it on time, and you could catch those breaks and edit it down. And what guys were learning in studios was pulling a tape off the reel and knowing how to mark it and then slice it and then put it back there. We were doing the same exact thing, but with the pause button with pause and record.
Seems way more efficient what you guys were doing too.
pretty much.
Yeah. That's cool, man. Do you save any of those tapes?
Nah,
Ah,
nah.
that's too bad,
Those,
man.
yeah, tapes didn't last long. You
What
know,
did you do, by the way? Did you sell these? Did you just rent them out for
some
parties?
you could sell,
Mm-hmm.
some we trade other guys for theirs,
Mm-hmm.
and mainly you just would stack them up in your room. And if you were going to the beach, or if you were going to a house
Ah,
party,
you
or
bring
if
them,
you
just
were,
play them along. Okay,
yeah, you
nice.
know, that summer of '76 and '77. Those were like really incredible summers.
I bet. I bet.
You
And it
know,
was around that time that your mom said disco doctor or disco
yes,
doc. And so and like you said, like it clicked as a graffiti name. Like
yes,
and so then in 76 or was it even 77? Did
yeah.
you start did you put a doctor piece or a doctor tag up?
Yeah, that's when I did my
Mhm.
first doc piece in '77
In
because of
70,
that.
okay. And so
Yeah,
then like I'm really curious, like, you've been doing these drawings on pads like you mentioned. Dudes are like, you're gonna put it on a wall. You're like, no. But then your mom says, disco doctor. Where's the like connection between getting a name and saying, okay, now I'm gonna get paint together to go paint a wall? Like what influenced it, or you know
well,
what was
I
the
don't know.
impulse?
It's you. I always said that it's the name sometimes that motivates the artist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if 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 I would have wrote something like Pookie on paper, I would have never been motivated to put that on a wall.
Because
You
it's not
know,
dignified, it's not inspirational,
yeah, it's
it's
just
not what you
nothing
want to
to
be
it.
when you grow up. But doctor, a little bit closer.
Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it just resonated. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I said, you know, and I
Okay.
started all of a sudden now I'm drawing in my books, and all of a sudden it has more flair. It had more meaning, more purpose. And I was really going in, you know, I'm getting better at it now because it seemed like I had a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And and that was the year I met my first graffiti teacher, and it was all a go after that.
And I'm also curious, like, actually, first of all, who was that? Who was that first mentor?
The first mentor was a guy named Dynamite 149.
How'd you meet him? What's that story?
Well, he was kind of like the local um it guy. He was that dude
Mm.
because he had pieces all over the projects, like on the handball courts, on the library,
Ah, okay.
wherever there was a wall, he had something. And
And I'm curious because I don't know Dynamite 149. What was his style? What was he doing? Straight letters? Was he kind of he have like some funk to it?
he had every. It was like simple funk.
Mm-hmm.
He could do all styles, but his stuff was very readable.
Okay.
But he was really good at getting it out there and making it. I mean, he understood the power of his name, you know, because Dynamite had to be like an explosion.
Yeah,
It had to. So he always did his name on like funky angles and perspective, almost like it was always popping out or exploding. You know, he would draw bombs next to his name, like the old cartoon bombs, the black one with the fuse.
Uh-huh.
You know, firecrackers and explosions and stuff. You know, he knew what he was doing, and he was painting trains and everything. So he was official. And one of the neighborhood kids that I got tight with, he says he looked and he saw my sketchbook, and he was like, "Oh, you do that too?" And he says, "Yo, do you know Dynamite?" I said, "Nah." I said, "I would love to meet him." He goes, "Oh, he lives on my floor." He's like, "I'll introduce you to him." And he brought me over to him, and Dynamite looked at my stuff, and he was "Not bad." He said, "It's a little toy, but you know, you got a little something going on there."
I'm curious also,
And,
was your book full of doctor pieces?
well, by that point, it was between doctor and doc.
Okay.
You know, I had some of them were docs, and most of them were doctors. And he kind of told me in so many words that, listen, you know, there's a million people that write that, you know.
Yeah.
So you might have a problem with that,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, what are you talking about? Why would I have a problem? And he's like, well, you can't take someone else's name. I said, what do you mean take so? Like, I didn't know there was like this universe,
Yeah.
And like the more he talked, the more amazed I was. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
really couldn't believe how much bigger than me this thing was.
Yeah, no, I was going to ask you that earlier. Like 77, right? You're like a teenager now. Like, had you still not really left East New York and Queens? Like, is that about your scope of New York City at that
well,
time?
77, I started riding trains a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and but it was overwhelming. Like, I really couldn't digest everything that I was seeing,
Yeah.
and I really also wasn't impressed because the train line that I rode didn't have masterpieces on it.
What was it? What line?
The A line.
Mm-hmm.
Had I rode the IRTs, I would have been I probably would have jumped a little faster.
Yeah.
But my home line was a little soggy,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was just mostly guys just getting up.
Yeah.
It was mostly throw ups and tags.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where I was. So I when I rode the train, I was like, well, I'm on par. I'm doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
So there was very little motivation.
And it's just so I can get the like kind of timeline right. Had you done a doc or a doctor piece before you met Dynamite and showed him your black book?
Only on paper.
Okay, so everything was on paper. So was it Dynamite that then? Well, I mean, you said he mentored you. Did he take you under, like right about there? I mean, he did in a way, telling you.
He did, but I still hadn't spray painted yet.
Okay.
When I started spray painting, I found out that a kid that lived in my building was doing graffiti too.
Yeah, who was that?
It was a guy named KC1,
Mm-hmm.
and he was ahead of me. Like he had already like took marker tags. He had already spray painted, and we were childhood friends, but I didn't know he was doing this. Because that's the fun mystery part.
Yeah,
It's
right.
like the whole discovery thing.
Right.
And once he ascertained that you're doing this, but only on paper, he was like, okay, we're going to be partners because everybody needs a lookout.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, so we're going to watch each other's backs and we're going to do it together. And then he was just like, okay, we got to get markers. We got to get this. We got to get ink. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, this is just too much. And he's like, yo, if you're going to do it, you got to do it. And
You still have your El Marco in your pocket?
No, I had moved up to a bigger markers at this point. And
but you weren't on.
Had given me a marker.
Okay. But no band roll-ons, no like Flowmaster, like big juicy kind of mops yet. You were still holding smaller markers when you met KC1.
No, by that point I had pilots.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And but I hadn't learned how to take the guts out or flood.
Okay.
Okay. I because that was never really my thing. I always was very neat, so I didn't like that whole concept of drippy, unreadable tags. Even to this day, my tag is more of a print. I don't. Right. It's not very stylized. It doesn't have much flair in it.
Yeah. Super legible, recognizable.
Yeah. Right. That was always that's just me.
Yeah. So then, did KC take you out bombing?
Yeah, in the neighborhood, we didn't hit trains yet.
Right, but streets.
But we were tagging up streets, handball courts, and in '77, I was that summer I was working with a contractor, and I was able to get my hands on spray paint for some hardware stores and some other jobs, and like I go on the job site, there might be 5 or 6 cans there. Of course I stole them, and by '77, Casey taught me how to rack paint. Well, I don't say he taught me, but he told me this is what had to be done.
Right.
because there's the only way to get it, because they wouldn't sell it to us.
But he didn't teach you? Like you had to figure out on your own ways to
Well,
hog that paint?
I just, how'd he do it? He explained it to me. I said, oh, I could do that.
Yeah.
And we would just go in stores and get it the best way we knew how.
Where would you go? What stores?
The store I used to go to is a store called TSS. They were a chain of department stores.
Hmm.
They were like the precursor to malls.
Okay.
Because they had like different floors in them and everything, and they sold everything.
They had like a hardware section where they had paint.
Yes. But they also had like and it was so funny that I had spent prior years casing the joint because it had a record store right next to the paint.
Okay.
So I had spent so many years buying records in there that I really knew how the place moved. Like I understood the whole algorithm of how the store people and the clerks and so when I went back there to steal paint, I was like in my element,
Yeah, you were comfortable already. And
that was my home. I spent hours in this place.
Did TSS have like their own line of sort of like dollar can style paint, or did they sell brands that people would recognize?
They sold Rust-Oleum, Krylon, and like a few other things.
And was that some of the first paint that you were racking then? Like good
Absolutely.
Quality paint? And was that something is that something that KC told you? Like, go get the Rusto, get the Krylon?
We just, we put it together because we had used cheap paint before.
Okay.
We had used horrifyingly bad paint that just dripped down the wall. So,
right.
you learn very quickly that stuff is trash. We got to get what these guys are using. And I think it was in '77 I did a blockbuster on the back of my elementary school, and which kind of harkens back to my like perspective and drawing buildings and like the 3D stuff.
But I'm also curious, like, what influenced the letter style of the big blockbuster?
Well, I think it goes back to when I was like drawing buildings. So a big blocky structure of a letter that I could put like some nice 3D perspective on. So that was. But
you hadn't seen any other graph writers doing a big block?
Sure. Okay. It was out there. It was out there.
Yeah. Okay.
But I felt that was like a good thing to do for like one of my first things.
And you did that with KC? No, you did that with Dynamite.
Yeah. No, I did that with KC. I never painted with Dynamite.
I see.
Yeah, because he was kind of like like a big shot. Like, I can't paint with you. You're a toy.
Right.
Like, I could show you how to do it.
Okay.
And maybe one day, if you get good enough, I'll let you do something with me.
Okay.
Because, he had it all figured. He was the guy. He had been painting trains and everything. And I'm just this, snot-nosed kid that just coming up,
Yeah. So tell us about that mission, that first blockbuster. It was all with racked paint, right? As you said.
Yeah, racked. Some paint I got from work. I came up on like a box of white spray paint. So
was it going to be a white fill for this?
Yeah, it had a white fill, and then we got a couple of like 2 cans of black, and that's what we outlined it, did it 3D with. They didn't even have a force field or a cloud around it.
Okay.
And it was so funny was when Casey said, "Where you want to do it? Do you want to do it like on the handball court or what?" I said, "No, we're going to do it on the building." And he goes, "Why?" And the reason why I wanted to do it on the building was I wanted to use the bricks as a guide.
Got your grid, huh?
Yeah.
Nice.
And, it was all measured out, 4 bricks this way, 2 that way. It was just, and I just realized that at a very young age that was like graph paper to me.
Yeah. Wow. That's cool. What did KC say? Did he get it? Was he like, "Oh yeah, makes sense"?
No, he was just like, whatever.
Okay.
That's kind of how he was. It's just like, whatever. You want to do it here? We'll do it here. And Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask you how big the blocks were. Like, how much space was that wall?
Um, Pretty big. I'd say each letter was like maybe 5 feet, maybe 6 feet long.
Wow. And what, as tall as you could reach?
No, they weren't that tall.
Okay.
They were much longer than.
Okay.
Well, that's kind of what a blockbuster is. A blockbuster is where you kind of like elongate the letters,
Mm.
and you're going for the block. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you want something as long as a block. You know, like a city block. That's how I always took it. Why it was called blockbusters.
Well, that's cool, man. I never thought of it in that way. That's cool.
Yeah,
Nice.
they're always like, if you say to me blockbuster, the first thing comes to mind is a stretched out, you know, almost like a typeface, but
Mm-hmm.
very, very legible. But
Yeah.
you know, it's going for distance.
Yeah,
Like you
and
want to
that's-
take up a big space.
And we did blockbusters back in the day, thinking of them kind of like letters that would fit into a perfect cube, like a block. And then we would often like TikTok them, you know, kind of
Yeah.
classic TikTok. But yeah, I never thought of it in that way. Like take the whole block. That's fresh.
Yeah,
That's dope.
yeah.
Um,
Like those letters that you were fitting into a block would be more like top to bottom,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because
I
you're
get that.
you're making them big and they're fitting,
Yeah.
and like they fit in that perfect square. But
Mm-hmm.
blockbusters are always thought of more like rectangular. They're longer. They're elongated and stretch out
That's
to
cool.
so like maximum you know, space.
Yo, and that's like the kind of like these definitions, it's like lexicon stuff, man. It's so cool
Yeah.
to get on record, man, because, you know, I mean, there's probably 100 different ideas of a blockbuster from 100 different writers, and it's so cool to hear
Right.
yours. Let's go back to that mission. Also, what was the school? What was the name of the school?
PS224.
And that's in East New York.
Yeah.
Dope. And so, was it a late night mission? When did you guys go
Oh,
out?
it was late. It was late for us. You know, it was dark.
Okay.
But like I said, that was the age where I could steal off and, you know, into the
Mhm.
night. I couldn't come home at like 1, 2 in the morning.
Right.
But,
Your mom would know.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like 9. I think we probably started around 9 o'clock at night.
Mm.
And,
Okay, so it
you
really
know,
wasn't that late. I mean, could people have seen you?
Yes and no, but it was really dark over there by the school. This was a long time ago where lighting wasn't a issue. You know, like half of New York was very dark.
Right.
You know, it's not like now where everywhere you go, everything
It's
is
all
lit up.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, when that school went to bed, that was it. They shut all the lights out. They would even have the lights on in the building. It was just dark over there.
Yeah. So light wasn't a concern. Was there concern about, I don't know, getting kind of like robbed for your paint or,
No, not at all. No, we had never come across that at that point.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it was just kind of a beautiful time, and everybody was just living and enjoying.
And plus, we weren't in the area or that ground that would put us face to face for someone to steal our paint.
Right.
Now, had we gone to the train yards, we might have run across people like that.
Okay. Yeah.
But even at that time, there wasn't really a lot of that. You know, that was the 80s thing, that vamping for paint.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that all started like in maybe 1980, where people were consciously, you know, going out of their way to stick people up for their paint.
Okay, right. And so this is still 77, and and so I just want to like, you know, be able to paint the picture. So you go out around 9, you start your own school, so you probably felt pretty comfortable there. You're with KC1, you got these white fills, black outlines. You're gonna take up the whole block or the whole wall. And were you guys like watching each other's backs? Did you paint at the same time? Like, what was the?
No, we painted at the same time.
So there was like there was a comfort level there.
Dark.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then, what was it like, man? Finishing up that first piece and standing back and taking a look at it. How'd you feel?
Well, I really thought I accomplished something. You know, I was like, wow. You know, like I'm a real graffiti writer. You know, like this is happening.
Yeah.
And then I remember, like, coming back the next day to look at it in the daytime. We were so hyped up to go over there and look at it.
Yeah.
And just our hope was that other people would be looking at it. And what wound up happening was I remember seeing it in the daylight and going, wow, that's kind of not how it looked in my mind.
So how did it look in your mind?
In my mind, it was just like really juicy, well filled in.
Mm.
You know, it was just so dope. Like, it was just an incredible thing. And when I came back the next day, I said, wow, this doesn't look like the other guy's graffiti. You know, where everything was filled in so solid. It was kind of sketchy a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
In some areas. And then I realized that the paint wasn't that good and that the lines were very thin. You know, we wasted a lot of paint trying to fill it in and make it juicy, but it still was, you know, it was a little ashy in certain places. And then that's when, you know, Casey was like, yo, I heard there's like this spray cap that like makes that look better. And I said, well, damn, man, we got to get some of those.
Because you guys were using the stock caps that came on those white cans. Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's when you start, as you do, you know, you don't learn anything until you actually go do it.
Yeah, no doubt.
And that's when it all happened. It was like, oh, like there's levels to this.
Mm-hmm. Also,
you know,
I've heard from a lot of other interviewees that like catching flicks in '77 like wasn't really a thing for a lot of these guys. Yeah, so you got no photos of that.
No photos.
I'm sure you see it real vividly though in your mind. I wonder if someone did catch flicks of that.
Possibly.
Yeah, and so now you realize,
it wasn't bad. It just wasn't great.
Yeah,
you know.
What about the letter structure? Were you happy with the letters, the form?
Oh, that I nailed that. You know, for a first timer, I think I murdered it. You know?
3D, all that stuff was like right on time.
Sure.
Dope.
Yeah. All the perspective was there.
That's pretty cool. That the biggest flaw was actually not you. It was just kind of your materials and your tools.
Right.
So, dude, that's dope, man. And so now, like, you're like kind of like, and also, was it Doctor and KC1 or Doc?
It was just a Doc.
DOC. Nice.
Yeah.
And did Casey do Casey with a number 1 or KCONE or just KC?
I think he just did a KC if I remember correctly.
And even though the fill-in was sketchy, you must have felt pretty good. You must have been pretty happy.
Oh, it felt hella good. It felt hella good.
Yeah.
And then that's when I decided I got to do my first like burner. Because I had started sketching them.
Okay.
You know, stylized in mechanical letters. And I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do next.
Yo, and you know, like, I mean, this is what I was saying before the interview, man, that like with your history, right? There's no way. I mean, I think I even said like maybe we'll get to the 80s. No, I said maybe we'll get to the 90s. And like here's an hour, right? Like I think that's our part 1, Doc. Because to be honest, man, what you just told us, I mean, it's real special, right? And of the interviews I've heard of you, they don't touch on this stuff. So I'm real happy that we got a lot of this the little stuff that was going on. And like, you know, we'll keep them salivating, man. We'll keep them thirsty to hear about that first burner and everything else that follows after 1977, which is a lot, right? What do we got? We got 40 years to go because you're still doing it, homie.
Well, it was a really small piece with what I thought was a burner. You know, and I think I have a picture of it. I'm pretty sure I have a picture of that.
Well, you want to talk about it? Like, when did you do it? Did you do it right after the blocks?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Yeah. So
very soon after. And
also, I guess I should first say, like, what's Doc's definition of a burner? Because we learned about what a blockbuster is from you. What's your burner definition?
Well, it had to be very stylized. Well, this was my perception at the time. It had to be stylized. It had to have a little flair to it. It had to have an arrow or two. You know,
and were you taking a lot of this from Dynamite 149, like the way he had?
From him. And different things that I was seeing in the neighborhood.
Okay.
And but there was one thing I had left out. Right before we had did the pieces, what was the catalyst for us was that me and Casey was out playing baseball one day, and there were these two guys in broad daylight doing pieces on the bleachers, in the baseball bleachers. It was like concrete. It was like it didn't have seats. It was just like concrete. And we just sat there. We put down our gloves and bats, and we were just watching them. And when they completed it, they came over to us and they were like, "Yo, little man, you know, keep an eye on this for us." We were like, "What?" And they were like, "Yeah, keep an eye on this. You know, if you see anybody that writes on it or crosses it out, let us know." And now I'm looking at these two guys who I don't know from a can of paint. Like, they were like serious, like, "Yo, if anybody goes over this," or I'm saying to myself, "Well, why would somebody do that?" You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it just blew my mind that there was like this whole thing, this process behind the process.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget it. They wrote Vice and Fork, and they did it. I mean, we watched them, and they had colors, and they did like simple block styles.
Okay.
And you know, and I think that's what was, on a sidebar, what kind of motivated me to do that simple block thing the first time.
Oh, okay. Because that was before you went out and did that doc with Casey.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then my next thing was like that felt like a Hall of Fame to me, because the place was covered in graffiti.
Where was that baseball field? Where was it at?
That was in Cypress Hills Projects.
Ah, okay.
And
still there
I
now?
decided,
Is the baseball diamond still there?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, the bleachers are, but if someone even thinks about writing something, it's painted the next day.
I'm sure. Yeah.
You know, they don't tolerate it anymore. But there used to be a lot of pieces up in there. And that, to me, became my Hall of Fame. I would sit there in the summer, and then I would notice guys would come up to like smoke weed and drink. And then it dawned on me, like, some of these guys are graffiti writers. Because dudes would just kind of like look and check each other out, and then be like, they'd mumble something, and next thing you know, they're all hanging out. So I said, you know, I need to paint something in here. Like, that's, you know, once I do that, I'm going to be somebody. And then that's where I did my first burn ad. And it was like a really like weird angular dock piece that looked more like 3 triangles. But, you know.
Did you sketch it out on paper first?
Yes, I did. I absolutely did.
And like, what about color scheme? How did you like come up with the scheme?
There was no color scheme.
Oh.
I had like a little bit of paint left over from the Blockbuster. And I did it with that. I had 1 can of black and 1 can of white left.
Oh, that's cool. So a burner in Doc's world can be black and white.
Absolutely.
Awesome, man. You know, like the way we came up, burners had like 40 colors, right? Like everything included. You know? So that's great. That's great to hear. And then what was your vibe on that? Had you gotten like a fat cap or better caps for that burner piece? Or were you still rocking stock?
That's why it was really small.
Okay. And how was your fill in this time? Was it less scratchy?
It wasn't scratchy because I kind of did it at dusk, so I could see. And this was a very desolate place. The area where I painted on the bleachers, and
no one was going to come through and sweat you if you started at sunset. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Nice. Did you go solo?
Yeah, this one I did by myself. No, wait a minute. No, Casey was there.
Watching your back?
And, kind of watching my back, because I told him I really had to do this. And I think he took the leftovers and he did something like next to it. But it was a lot better. And like I said, I really thought I did something, you know.
Yo, and I'm just curious that you got flicks of that one, huh? You got photos.
Yeah, I have. I'm pretty sure. I know I saw it not too long ago, maybe a year or two ago. I was going through some photos.
I'm definitely going to ask you to dig that up for me. I need to see that.
Okay.
And yeah, man, on the real, dude, this has been great, Doc. And I think that we'll cut it now so we can like just put a bookmark in your story, right? Which is, like I said, we got 40 more years that we can talk about in a part 2, part 3. Who knows?
Sure.
And I'm trying to do this now. I get people on record. Will you come back and do part 2 with us?
Absolutely.
Bet. That's what's up. You guys heard it here. Doc said it. He'd come back. Yo, this has been great. And another thing I'd like to ask you to do is just tell people where they can find your work online, whether it's your Instagram or if you have any other channels that you want to promote to people to find your work.
Yeah, right now, my website we had to take it down because we're restructuring it. But you can find me on Instagram. I post weekly. You know, old stuff, new stuff, things that people haven't seen before. So it's Doc TC5.
That's one thing. DOC TC5.
One word.
Okay.
Yeah, one word.
Doc TC5. Great.
Yeah.
Any other channels? You got a Facebook or anything else?
No, I don't like. I keep the Facebook for family.
I hear you. And will we get to see a site soon? Is it going to be back up?
Well, the site wasn't just me; it was the actual crew site.
Ah, okay.
So we're gonna restructure that, make it a little more better.
Listen, like I said, man, we're real blessed, man. I mean, real honor to get a dude like you on the podcast, and I thank you.
You know, thank you too, and also Cycle for setting it up.
Thanks for listening to another episode of My Life in Letters. We record live in Bushwick, Brooklyn, USA. Our producer is Christopher Piccioni. Our social media manager is Jonathan Drexler. Our videographer is Jordan Milkner for Way Up Creative. Our intern is Tamika Schlesinger. Our theme music is by Fonte. And my name is Adam Fujita. If you guys have got something to say, drop us a line at our Instagram page at My Life in Letters Podcast, or send us an email at mylifeinletterspodcast@gmail.com. We're always looking for your feedback, and we're always looking for ways to grow and be better. Write a review on iTunes or Google Play. Share the podcast with your friends. Get your whole crew to subscribe, and have a great day. Thanks for listening.
The language of letters.